we can get started. All right, so hello everyone, my name is Chris. I'm kind of new to this meetup, so most of you probably haven't seen me before, or have seen me around and haven't really talked to me. And so I'm currently studying computer science at OU, and I kind of noticed a general theme that for FreeCodeCamp, and just around here in general, a lot of people didn't seem to finish, or either didn't finish computer science in school or are coming from a different field. So I just wanted to give kind of how I got started in web dev, studying computer science in college. So just so you know where I'm coming from, I'll just go a little bit over kind of my college history here, kind of what I did before I started coming to the meetups. So I was born and raised in Canada, the land of Canadian geese and meese, maple syrup, stuff like that. And after I finished high school in 2012, I moved here to Oklahoma to live with my mom, and I thought it'd be nice to attend college in the States. So since we live really close to Edmond, I decided to attend UCO, and I started studying, electrical engineering there. And I did that for my first 2 semesters, and that was when I had my first programming and computer science experience at their engineering computing class, which was a required class for all the engineering disciplines. And they taught that class in C. And so after my first 2 semesters, I decided I wanted to do something more related to computers. So I switched to, or transferred to UCO, or OU, which is where I'm now, and studying computer engineering. And here, the computer engineering curriculum is basically the same as computer science for the first 2 years or so. So I went through all their Java courses, and I studied abroad for a year in 2015, and I came back last year, September of last year, and that's when I decided I didn't really want to work with hardware. I wanted to focus more on computer science, and so now I'm fully computer science major. So I'll probably stick with this one. Don't know yet, fingers crossed. So let's go into how I got started in web dev. So I didn't learn any, HTML, CSS, JavaScript in school. So my first experience was actually an internship. I got the internship through a personal connection through my mom. And it was an internship at a company which is somewhat notorious around here, apparently, that no one likes, Alamode. And if you don't know what Alamode or what they do, they sell software for real estate agents, appraisers, mortgage brokers, and they one of their products is basically custom websites for these agents and brokers, hosted on their custom CMS system. And so my job as a intern was, their system was running on a legacy Flash system. You had all these fancy animations. You could add sound effects, things like that. And so they were trying to revamp that and use Bootstrap. So what they had in the past was basically this kind of, it might be a little bit hard to see, but it's basically a rich text editor, right? You could put in text, lists, tables, images, things like that, and it would compile it into HTML. And that works great for simple text like that, and just gets injected into this page that looks like that. Your top bar is all sidebars all loaded in with Flash. You could put in sound effects when you hover over each button. It makes like a laser gun sound, like a it's really bad. But anyway, so with simple content like that, lists and paragraphs, that is pretty easy for it to generate. But once you start adding in, once you start adding in styling to the text, like bolding, coloring, different layouts, right? You start getting, stuff like that. Weird font tags everywhere, empty strong tags and spans. And so if you've ever had the misfortune of working with this kind of HTML, I'm sorry. But basically, they had a lot of their default content pages were, either laid out with tables, or it was laid out, or had lots of, font tags laid out everywhere. And so it's basically my job to turn code that looks like that into, just like that, right? The Bootstrap framework, it already styles all of your default components, right? So you don't need anything there. And so if you have this, it looks consistent on all the sites, and it'll be updated by any site-wide themes that the customer may choose. So I was thinking about demoing some of the things I built. So I worked on this for about two weeks. I transferred all of their content pages into clean HTML before I started building some actual template pages that customers could buy. I was going to demo them, but maybe we'll save that for the end if we have time. So how did learning computer science in school actually help me in this internship? It didn't really help directly. So let me explain, right? So at OU, if you've taken class at OU, you'll find out really quickly that OU is mostly a Java school, right? Most of their classes, for the better part of your degree, you'll be working with Java for all of your classes. You'll have maybe a few classes here or there that uses something else, but for the most part, it's Java. And I think that while Java is a great language, it's got a robust API, it's got good type safety, stuff like that. The students kind of get locked into thinking, rather than thinking how can I write this in code, it becomes how can I write this in Java. And so you get kind of locked into that mentality of how to write software and code. And so some of the things that I wish that I knew when I was at the internship, and just in general that they didn't teach. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but essentially I would have wished that they taught me how to code better, right? So just general learning different languages, right? I was using Java basically the whole time I was there, except for one class, and good programming practices. So things like how to write clean code, how to put in proper comments. There was, if you follow the FreeCodeCamp Medium blog, there was a post about a week and a half ago called Putting Comments into Code, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by a certain Bill Saurer. I'm sorry if I said that name wrong. And basically details how it's important to put comments into code, but you should do it in a way that is helpful, and there are things you should and shouldn't do. And so they never really taught us that. They just said, put comments in your code or else we'll take marks off, something like that. So building projects, right? So in a way, when you do your assignments, it's kind of like building a project, but they don't, in the end, it's still a class assignment, right? You just want to get it over with. And once you've done it, you just kind of toss it off into the side. You don't really want to look at it anymore. And so you're not really encouraged to go back and improve on your projects any further, and take them to the next step. And finally is application of theory. So if you go into the data structures class at OU and you'll ask them, have you built a binary tree data structure before? They'll probably say yes, because that was their last assignment in the class, and they have built it. But if you ask them, when would you use a binary tree to store data instead of an array, a stack, linked list, they may not really be able to tell you. They may be able to tell you some of the advantages, but not really how or in what situation you would use them. So that was learning how to code. And another big thing was version control. So Git and GitHub is pretty essential for working in groups and collaborating with others, and just for keeping track of your own work and make sure you don't lose your progress. So they don't really teach this in any of the classes. I asked a friend before who took the classes a few semesters before. He said that no, they didn't teach it. But in my human-computer interaction class, the professor attempted to explain to us how to use Git. Now I say attempted because I don't think he succeeded. If you walked into that class not knowing how to use Git, you came out still not knowing how to use Git. And you were probably even more confused about what it was from before. And so, yeah, I think that would have been a nice thing to learn, maybe freshman or sophomore year as you're getting into working on your projects and keeping track of your progress. And lastly, relating to version control and GitHub, collaboration. A lot of your assignments, they tell you to do it on your own, right? And so that kind of discourages you from copying from others, cheating, all the, academic integrity, stuff like that. But when you do that, you don't really get to experience working on a software project as a team. When you just think of work on group projects in school in general, say, okay, you do this, I do that, and we'll just put it all together when we're done. And that doesn't really work all the time with software, especially when you go into a job and you have to work on a team. And the team, you may not always get to meet the team, right? They may be working remotely, things like that. So learning collaboration would have been a good thing to know. I believe they teach, I believe you have a bit more group work later on in the degree in the last year of study, but not so much in the first 3. Now, with that being said, there were things that, that did help and I did find useful. And first thing was I got used to coding, right? So when you do all your assignments, you code, you do your assignments. And so when you get to the job, it doesn't really feel all that foreign. And you get used to having other students and your professors look at your code. And so compared to maybe someone who was always learning on their own, didn't really get a chance to show other people their code, I kind of feel like that helped me there. Next thing was, I now find learning a new programming language not that bad. I said, most of my classes were taught in Java. The data structures class was taught in C++. And so the professor never really went over much more than, how to assign variables, how to, write a function, just basic syntax, and all of the quirks of the language we were left to, figure out for ourselves, things like pointers, stuff like that. And so the important part was that you understood the fundamentals of programming, right? Like in most languages, you'll have a for loop or a while loop or an if statements. And once you understand that, all you really need to do is go look up the syntax rather than having to figure out how do for loops work in this language, because they all work, more or less the same way. And finally, how to search for help, right? Working on assignments really forces you, well, I mean, doesn't force you, but I had to Google for help a lot, right? I had to go on Stack Overflow a lot and look up, a variety of things. And when I was at my internship, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but I didn't study any HTML before I went to the internship, so web dev wasn't even a thing that I'd considered before that. And so I had to look up stuff, every day for the first week or 2 when I was just learning HTML, on the fly. And so I think these are the 3 things that really helped me while I was there. So I think I've gone on long enough. So just to wrap up, learning computer science didn't really directly help me. There were things that kind of made it easier, but nothing directly helped because I was working with HTML and CSS, maybe a little bit of JavaScript, and they didn't teach that at school. I mean, why would they? So my main message here is don't worry if you're not a computer science major or if you stop studying CS. It's not a big deal, especially when you're working in something like front-end web development where it's more about the design and building pages rather than worrying about how to sort an array efficiently or how to balance a binary tree. And what's important to remember is just the fundamentals: how to write clean code, how to use version control, how to collaborate with others working on big projects. And yep, that's it for me. And yep, feel free to contact me if you have any questions.